In the second part on my lecture videos and book reviews, I do want to review the two remaining examples of book reviews that I have listed under recommended course readings. In the previous one, I went over some major rhetorical moves and stylistic elements of book reviews in general, and show you one example. And so I'm going to show you two more examples here. This first one is from Science, from Nature, one of the two journals, and it's actually a review of two books written on a similar subject. It's a little different than the review that you'll be writing, but there's some things in there that I really like, and I thought I wanted to point them out to you. And the last one is a more traditional book review in a scientific journal that I think will also be useful to you to take a look at. If you haven't looked at those book reviews yet, you can look at them later. Just wanted to make sure that you have access to them if you wanted to look at them again outside of this video. So let's look at the second example from Science. There we go. So from the journal Science, and as I mentioned, it's a review of two different books, and so this book review is a little longer than your traditional book review. In general, I want to say most book reviews tend to be 5, 6, 7 paragraphs with the intro and conclusion, one being a paragraph each, and then something like 3 to 5 or 6 body paragraphs. And again, it depends on the length of the book, the way the writer organizes their book review, and so on. This one is a lot longer than that, but that is because two books are being reviewed and compared and contrasted. And then, but there's the review still follows a similar structure, just the introductory paragraphs. There's 3 of them, then there's a whole bunch of middle text, and then there's one conclusion. So I'm going to show you the first 3 from the intro, a few from the main text, but not all of them, and in the conclusion paragraph. So this one here, I really like the personal tone. It's a great hook. So about 4 years ago, after an exhaustive review of the female circumcision literature, so this is the topic, right? Complexities of a controversial practice that this writer is writing about. So after 4 years ago, I wrote an article in which I deplored the state of our knowledge and advocated better research as a prerequisite to interventions. When I shared the draft with a colleague, he commented, "So you don't think we should send the Marines?" His wry response captures the then prevalent assumption that any writing on female circumcision would be militant. As the two books reviewed here demonstrate, today the presumption is even less valid. So with this first paragraph, the author of this book review establishes themselves as a true expert in the field, right? They have obviously done some work on this topic before. They were writing it several years ago. Again, it is not uncommon for book reviews, particularly in a journal like Science. I would want to say that most book reviews in Science are written by experts in the field rather than by novice researchers, because it is such a reputable journal. And then the second paragraph was still again in the intro that stretches out over 3 paragraphs, where the author of this book review provides us, the readers, with a general context of where these two books that they're reviewing are being placed. So one perceptible shift in the large literature on the subject concerns empirical research, although published accounts are still dominated by advocacy writings. And last, so empirical research apparently is a field, as an area that needs some more work in this area, or there's a call for more empirical research in this field. And the second shift concerns the perspectives from which the topic is considered. While outright condemnation and activist calls for eradication continue to prevail, recent discussions are characterized by a greater diversity in viewpoints and have begun to include more women from the countries where the practices are found. So we see basically more empirical work now, and then we'll see some more writings by voices of women who have been affected by the practice of female circumcision from countries most predominantly outside of Western Europe and North America. So, and then we get to the real sort of intro where the writer of the review provides us with a quick description of some of the text that she'll be actually reviewing. Okay, and but goes also right into one of the books. So rather than providing a summary of both books at the same time, the author starts with the first publication by Alan Greenbaum, and writes about, Greenbaum, where this writer is from, she, some of the limitations that the author points out about her data. And this continues for a few more paragraphs. And by this I mean a discussion and a critique and an evaluation of Grunbaum's book continues for, I want to say, another 2, if not 3 paragraphs, which I've taken out here. Just wanted to show you that rather than having one intro paragraph about one book, this author provides 2 intro paragraphs setting the context and establishing themselves as an authority on the subject, and then goes into the first book. And on the next slide, you'll see after several paragraphs, then the writer goes into the second book. And I really like this topic sentence. And if you know anything about me, I do love the topic sentences. So although similarly concerned with the controversies, the volume edited by Bettina Schall-Duncan and Ivla Herman, where they're from, takes a different approach. There's 14 chapters to deal with 8 of the countries where female circumcision is found. There are some different ways the authors are presenting, the evidence is presented, and stories are presented, and so on. So great transition, great topic sentence, and again, I didn't include many of the paragraphs that follow, where you will find a more thorough engagement with the content and more thorough analysis and assessment of this particular book. In this case, it looks like it's an edited volume of different texts. And here is the last paragraph. So the conclusion is just like, traditional model of intro, main text, and conclusion is preserved. Such thought-provoking contributions are welcome, especially in a topic that has long elicited a bit more rhetoric than evidence. And we know from the beginning the way the author sets up her narrative. Her book review is all about, these 2 areas. Empirical research wasn't very prevalent around this topic, and then voices from women where this practice actually is being practiced. And so this last paragraph provides, again, sort of an overall assessment and a sort of so what in terms of this topic. The last example is a more traditional example in the sense of a book review written for a very specific audience, discipline-specific audience. And the previous one was published in Science, and Science enjoys a very broad readership, not just scientists or people in a particular field, but a very broad audience, including general audience members who might not have a background in scientific practices and scientific research. So this one here is interesting, and I've actually never seen this before until I came across this one. It's this book review, which is also not that long. It's shorter than the previous one. Again, reviews only one book, has this abstract in it. And I was a little puzzled by that. But what this abstract is doing, it sort of takes the place of that first, or part of that first paragraph of the traditional 3-part book review, where the writer provides a quick summary of the book by Peter Brecher, and the book is called Discovering the Immune System as an Integrated Organ, right? So the writer, he presents us with the way, what Brecher he argues, and some other kind of interest, some other general intro into the topic and the content of the book. Now, the next paragraph is the first paragraph of the actual review after the abstract, where the writer provides us some information about Peter Brecher, himself, identifies by he, that he is a really well-known author in this field. So this is somebody who, basically what the author is telling us here of the book review is that we can trust Peter Brecher as a well-established scientist in this field of the immune system and immunology. Okay? And then, rather than showing you all the different paragraphs, I actually taken the topic sentences of each paragraph and put them together in this slide. Because this author, Corthay, goes chapter by chapter by chapter, which is, again, not the most inventive way to write a book review, but it works, right? Because as a reader, I'm looking for a structured approach to tell me what this book is about, so I might not have to read it myself, or I know what to expect when I want to read it. And again, I'm a big fan of topic sentences, so each of those really great and provide a great guideline and roadmap to the reader. So the first 2 chapters of his book, Brecher uses pedagogical skills. The third chapter is a more personal narration. In chapter 4, Brecher describes his theory of immune class regulation. Chapter 5 covers major developments in the field from 1970 to today. The last one is a little different. A valid theory for how the immune system functions is expected to provide novel treatment modalities. This is indeed the topic of the last 2 chapters of the book, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs for that main text of the book review. As I said earlier, 3 to 5 is fairly common. So even with the book with several chapters, the last one, the writer of the book review actually includes 2 chapters in 1 paragraph of their discussion. And here is the conclusion, and it's some really nice writing in here and some nice phrasing and some great assessment all packed into 1 sentence. Although very ambitious in its content with both theoretical and applied immunology, this book is very didactic and well written. Results from key experiments are illustrated by simple figures, which are similarly, major theories are illustrated in a clear fashion. An extensive reference list invites to further reading. Each chapter is summarized by a brilliantly written synopsis and in the last sentence. It is a must-read for anyone interested in immunology, a classic book already. Now, you might remember back to the first video when I listed those undesirable characteristics of a book review, and it said something about cliches, and I couldn't think of an example. Well, this probably could classify as a little bit of a cliche. Doesn't make this book review a bad one, actually. I like this cliche, quote unquote. I would maybe describe it more as a rhetorical move or common expression. Bordering on cliche, this idea, a classic book already. I also see a classic book in the making, right? It's another expression that some writers of book reviews use to describe a book that they really feel very strongly about as making an impact in the field. There's nothing wrong with using that. So if you use these phrases in your book review, I will not, deduct points for that. I just wanted to point out to you that some readers might perceive this as a sort of cliche. And even if they do, like I do, they might not care or might think it's okay. And some might have a different reaction to it. So just to give you an idea of what was meant by cliches earlier, since I couldn't think of an example when I recorded the first video. So happy writing with your book reviews. I'm really looking forward to those. I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of book reviews. I love reading book reviews. I used to read when I would get the physical paper of the Post when I was in grad school. I would get the Saturday edition. There was always the book review section in there, and the New York Times as well. That was the first thing that I would read. Not everything, but the ones that interested me. And it was a great way to kind of know a little bit more about what is being published in areas that I might not read books necessarily. And sometimes I would actually get those books because I was interested. The book reviews were that drew me in. And sometimes it was just nice to know that these books are out there. And for a while I actually kept a list of books that I wanted to read, and then it just got too long. In grad school it wasn't possible to read too much for pleasure. Anyway, so that's book reviews, as I said in my previous video, are really great ways to make lives of others a little easier. So think about reaching out to editors of journals if you're interested in writing book reviews. I strongly encourage you to do so. And again, as I said, I look forward to reading yours.